All right, in this video, we're going to perform a short time test. I've turned off the instantaneous setting, and we're going to run a short time test at 3000 amps. Let's go over to the short time element. The first thing we'll do is check the pickup. There are two methods for testing the pulse ramp method and the continuous ramp method. The continuous ramp method simply puts the current on and quickly raises it until we reach the trip point. While this method is sometimes used, especially if you have I squared T on your trip unit, we generally prefer the pulse ramp method. Here's how the pulse ramp method works. First, it finds a current lower than your trip point. Default is 88%. The trip unit sends out small pulses of current until it finds this point. Now, short-time trip delays are typically longer than instantaneous delays. For example, while 100 milliseconds is usually enough for an instantaneous trip, a short-time test might require a longer time, for example 300 milliseconds. But this depends on the settings. Once you put the max trip time in the software will know how long the pulses need to be to test the breaker. If you don't put in the max time, the pulses may not be long enough to trip the breaker. For this test, I've put the max time as 300 milliseconds, and the software will send out 396 milliseconds pulses. The software provides time longer than the max to be sure the breaker has a chance to trip. Now, I'll hit play. The system will first find 88% of the current, then start sending out pulses that last 396 milliseconds until we get a trip. It will keep raising the current level in between each pulse until the breaker trips. And there we go. The breaker has tripped. Now, we can perform a timing test. The default for timing test is to test at 150% of pickup, but you can adjust it as needed. For this example, I'll set it to 110%. Note that the software will automatically calculate the current. I will put it back to 150% and run the test. The software does not need to send pulses to find the current. It knows where to output the current based on percent output of the unit it took to find pickup. Let me reset my breaker quickly. All right, the breaker is reset. Now I'll hit play again. The test set sends out one pulse long enough to ensure a proper trip. It output the current pulse and tripped. That's the short time test process. As you can see, you need to input the correct timing specifications before running the test. This ensures everything works as expected. And that's it for the short time test.